The moment I stepped inside, there was a different air in the room. Everything seemed normal, but something was missing. Sarah, the head of the company's human resources department, greeted me with a smile. Yet that smile always felt foreign to me. Always too professional, too cold. Today was no different. Behind her, the light from the giant screen displaying the company logo illuminated every corner of the room. But that light, even for a moment, couldn't give me any sense of reassurance. "Liza, welcome," she said, her voice a little higher pitched than usual. Right after, the man next to her, Greg, nodded and smiled while glancing at a few pages. Unfortunately, that smile, too, was nothing more than a mask to me. "In a few minutes, everything will become clear," he added, but I noticed the relief he was trying to hide in his eyes. A few months ago, there had been talk about the company's new strategic direction. Back then, I saw it as a vision and still carried some hope inside me. But now I knew something was wrong. Through 17 years of dedication, the relationships I had built over the years, and all my efforts, what would be my reward? Today, in this room, I felt that everything was finally coming to an end. Greg slid the file in his hand slightly toward me and began speaking. "Liza, we know these kinds of changes are tough, but don't forget this decision is solely for the company's future. And the company is moving in a new direction." Behind the forced sentences squeezed into his words, there was a hidden sense of relief. Looking into his eyes, I saw how fake it all was. This wouldn't just be a blow to me, it would hit the entire team. But sadly, they weren't aware of it yet. I tilted my head slightly, then turned my gaze outside the room. I studied the stains where the ceiling met the wall, the dirty corner of the carpet. Slowly and patiently, I thought about how I had to become part of this cold approach that had been shown to me for years. But it wouldn't end like this. "Liza, you've been a very valuable employee for us. You've contributed to the company's growth in every way," Sarah continued, looking into my eyes. "But unfortunately, with this change, your position is being restructured. There will now be another managerial role to oversee this department." I took a slow, deep breath. The words echoed in my mind, but not a single one escaped my mouth. I was shocked, yes, but the real surprise was yet to come. A week ago, an email thread that arrived by mistake had changed everything. I had seen how a few executives in the company had secretly orchestrated all these decisions and turned it into a deception. I knew very well that there was a bigger plan behind what Sarah and Greg were saying, that it wasn't just about the company's interests but something else they were chasing. The only thing running through my mind was that they would pay the price for this injustice, this betrayal. I turned my eyes back to Sarah. Her hair, neat and perfectly in place, sat atop her head. I felt that I knew how she had clung to every opportunity the company had offered her over the years. But she had never built a real connection with me. People at the top of the company had always been close to each other, while I had always been left on the outside. Yet I had given them everything for years. "I understand," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, though a raging anger burned inside me. "These decisions aren't easy, of course. But nothing you've said surprised me. Just one thing I want to say. Don't forget how I patiently carried myself, my team, and all these projects for years." Sarah and Greg's faces tensed a little more. Because I hadn't dropped the real bomb yet. "Do you think I know everything?" I asked, my voice sharpening this time. "Yes, I know this whole restructuring plan was prepared long ago. I know how it was all orchestrated." My eyes locked onto Sarah's. This moment was the beginning of what would happen very soon. I slowly placed my hand on the table and continued, certain that nothing could escape my gaze. "The real price of my departure will be paid by your entire company. Just wait." That evening, as I left the office, there was a different feeling inside me than usual. Every step reminded me of how far I had drifted from this structure that had trusted me for so many years. But this time, what I felt wasn't fear. On the contrary, it was relief. I knew that, no matter what, I had to take a step forward at last. Sarah and Greg had said that my departure would be announced to everyone right after. "The team will keep you informed," Sarah had said, but the way she said "my team" sounded so distant. That group, which once saw me as a true leader, now made me feel how hard it was to leave them behind. But this was the beginning of something bigger. And a few hours later, I remembered that night when I found that email thread. Yes, those messages, the moment everything changed. A few people from the company's top ranks, including Sarah and Greg, had been sending private messages to each other. Plans had been made, decisions had been taken, and I was just a pawn. But underestimating them would be a big mistake. 'Cause I had learned so much more than they realized. That night, I stayed at my computer for a long time. I examined every detail of the correspondence. The email was from a managerial meeting, and what was discussed there went far beyond Sarah's so-called restructuring plans. The real reason behind this decision was tied to a merger of several companies. But the merger wasn't just about one employee. I was about to expose their secrets, their relationships, and everything they had told me. The next morning, everyone at the company's office had started their work. Normally, I'd sit at my desk and check the day's first email reports. But this time, everything was different. I sat at my desk so calmly that everything around me felt distant. I knew the plan I had built in my mind had to unfold like dominoes, one by one. But it all started with my team. It was around noon, and Sarah and Greg looked so relaxed that they seemed to have no fear at all. They were ignoring me, but deep down I could feel it. This silent threat behind me would break them. A few minutes later, I gathered my team. This was the hardest part. But the foundation of everything would be laid here. The 6 engineers I had worked with, together we had achieved massive projects. They were all talented and loyal. But their loyalty should never be repaid with just compensation or empty promises. Years of relationships shouldn't be dismissed in a single day. As I closed the door to the room, the first person to enter was James. I noticed the stern expression on his face and the messy hair on his head. We had worked together for years, and he had always been strong. "Liza, what's going on?" "Something feels really off today," he said, as if he had suddenly realized everything. But without saying a word to him, I kept calling everyone in. As the whole team began to gather, my eyes flashed with a momentary mix of anger and determination. "There's something I need to tell you all," I said. "And it's extremely important. Everything is going to change. If you're with me, you'll be part of something big." Everyone was silent. Question marks in their eyes pushed me further. But as I looked at them, I gave them confidence. Because the trust that had once been shown to me was something they deserved. "Think about it as much as you want," I said, "but this has to be your decision. The people who brought this company to this point are going to do something, will respond in kind. The time has come." They looked at each other and nodded one by one. James was the last to lift his head and say, "Always with you, Liza." It was a sign of his trust in me. From then on, everything would change rapidly. Yes, they would have to watch their downfall together, but I wouldn't just be a bystander. This was the beginning of it all. What was the reward for my loyalty? They cast me aside, but they didn't know that I would be the one to shake them, one by one. That morning, as I stepped into the office, something was slowly rising within me. The dark thoughts and angry inner monologues from the previous day lingered over me like a fog. Everything had taken shape rapidly in those few hours, but now a greater test lay ahead. Throughout the night, I meticulously considered every detail, every small move in my mind. This wasn't just a layoff decision. This was the biggest move of my life, the first step toward revenge. It was around 8 in the morning. When I entered the office, everyone had already started their tasks. I slowly made my way to my desk, but this time nothing felt the same. Now every desk, every chair in this room felt foreign to me. Yes, I had spent years in this room, held countless meetings, but now everything had changed. Every opportunity and trust the company had offered me now seemed like nothing more than a deception. I quickly checked a few new email notifications that had popped up on my desk. Most were unimportant, but one caught my attention. Urgent, new managerial appointments and future plans. Yes, unfortunately, the restructuring within the company wasn't just a transition process. It was pure manipulation, a plan to seize power. Sarah and Greg, along with a few executives behind them, had orchestrated every step of this process, dealing the biggest blow to me and my team. But ever since I uncovered their plans, everything had been different. Now it was time to make them play their own game. Suddenly, my phone rang and James's name lit up the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Liza, I saw you in the office. What's going on?" he said, his voice tinged with worry. "Something's off. I thought you were okay, but these recent developments..." "James," I said, my voice suddenly colder and calmer. "It's all a game, but you and the rest of my friends will be part of it. I trust you because I know how loyal you've been to me. But things are changing now. We're all heading down a different path." There was silence on the other end. Then James's voice echoed. "What do you mean? Are you pulling us into this too?" "Absolutely," I replied. "And accept it. It's not just you, this whole company will find out. I'm not in a rush to talk more with you, but we're going to make this plan even bigger. Freedom is just a few steps away. Are you with me?" After a few seconds of silence, he said, "Always." The hesitation on his face, the tone in his voice, whatever it was, he was resolute. He was with me. And in that moment, I felt just how loyal my entire team was to me and my plan. After hanging up, I took a deep breath for a moment. It had truly begun. And now the real game was starting. It was 10 o'clock. A few hours later, Sarah and Greg were supposed to be in their usual meeting room. I had already anticipated this. But now everything was different. In just a few minutes, my team and I would announce our move against them. My teammates slowly began gathering in the room. James, Mike, Claudia, Richard, Olivia, and Ben, 6 people. Each one of them would play this game with me. As the clock ticked, the determination in my eyes grew deeper with every passing moment. I closed the door to the room, and we all took our places around the table in turn. The air in the room wasn't as warm as it had been in our previous meetings. No one was smiling at each other. Everyone's face bore a look of resolve. This was the moment things got serious. Mike rubbed his hands on the table and spoke up. "Liza, when we talked, we didn't expect something this deep. Are you really planning to make such a big move?" My eyes were fixed on him. "Yes, because we need to realize the real power this company holds. They underestimated our loyalty, the effort we've put in for years. But we're going to turn it around. All this restructuring is just a sham." Claudia listened to me carefully. "But in the end, we're all losing our jobs, Liza. This plan could risk everything for us." "Yes, but we have nothing left to lose," I said in a firm tone. "What do we fight for here? No one is important enough to make decisions for us. We've dealt with this company's system for years, and now we've reached the end. Everything changes now." Richard noticed I'd never spoken with such determination before. "What do we need to do? When do we start?" "Today," I said. "Everyone will gather critical data from their positions, email threads, secret meeting notes, records of everything. Tonight, we'll hold a meeting where all of this will come to light. Today, Sarah and Greg will pay the price for every move they've made." After the meeting, as I finished talking with my team and left the room, another plan was forming in my mind. It was around 4 o'clock, and Sarah and Greg were set to attend an external meeting that afternoon. I'd heard about it, and I'd been waiting for this exact moment. Companies' big decisions wouldn't just be influenced from within, they'd be affected from the outside too. Before they left for the meeting, I recalled a few critical files I'd noticed early that morning in the section where Sarah and Greg kept their confidential documents. Those files contained evidence of the secret deals they'd made. But this time, I'd move them to a safe place and include those documents in tonight's meeting. Yes, they'd see just how big a trap they'd fallen into and how dangerous their current situation was. This first move was, in fact, a warning. Yes, Sarah and Greg might be at ease right now, but I no longer saw them the same way. If I were in their shoes, I'd feel like I was on a journey that wouldn't end well. And one thing was certain at the end of that journey. This company's fate would be shaped by my hands. As sunset approached, the atmosphere in the office grew increasingly stifling. Liza's morning declarations had slowly set her team into motion. James, Mike, Claudia, Richard, Olivia, and Ben. We were all chasing different tasks. Each of us had begun gathering critical data from our positions, retrieving hidden files, and taking notes. I knew in my mind how vital every step was. Every detail, every move, every piece of evidence would give me and my team more power. That evening, Sarah and Greg left the office for their external meeting. Their departure was, in fact, a crucial part of Liza's plan, because them being away would give us a chance to confront the other employees, and in doing so, we'd find the perfect moment for everything to fall into place. If they thought they were as powerful as they believed, they'd soon wake up to reality. My plan, above all, was to expose every dirty secret of the company from every angle. Earlier that day, before they left for their meeting, Liza and the team had taken files from Sarah and Greg's secret rooms. Notes overlooked for 2 weeks, missing emails, and misdirected documents had given us the opportunity we'd been waiting for. But there was something else. The document that would deliver the decisive blow, a secret deal between Greg and Sarah. As everyone worked patiently, I examined that file. Especially the truth beneath Sarah and Greg's cold, professional exteriors. Both of them had orchestrated these changes for the sake of stakes they wanted to secure by merging with another company's executive team. They had cast aside the value of their employees, years of effort, all of it. But what I saw in that document went far beyond them. Detailed how Sarah and Greg, in another major company merger, had made decisions that ignored employees entirely to increase their own shares. This plan wasn't just about the company's future, it was a move to line their own pockets. As I continued studying the file, my heart started pounding. In that moment, realizing everything became so easy. I could see the corrupt system underlying it all and the true owner of the company so clearly. Now I had time to get these files to the right people and document every step meticulously. It was around 8 o'clock, and everyone had finished the tasks they'd started in the morning, returning by evening. In the room, the seriousness on my team's faces became more pronounced with each passing minute. No one spoke unnecessarily. They were only wondering what was inside the box about to be opened and what step would come next. "All right, guys," I said, focusing on my team one last time. "Tonight, everything changes. We're moving to the second phase of the plan." Around 9 o'clock, the rest of the executive team, excluding Sarah and Greg, will gather for some key meetings in the office. Before that meeting, we'll get those documents to everyone watching. "So, tonight's when everything blows up?" James asked, with a mix of worry and determination. Yes, it was the moment everything would explode. I felt a sense of calm inside me. The outcome had to be this way. Yes, this is the perfect time to infiltrate the company and reveal everything at the right moment. If we make the right move, we can bring them down completely. Claudia paused for a moment, then nodded boldly. "We're all ready for this." Everything's going according to plan, right? I took a deep breath for a second. Yes, everything was going right. But there was something no one had noticed yet. Different games were being played within the company. Solving this wouldn't end with just taking down Sarah and Greg. It went much deeper. But for now, everyone needed to focus on the same goal. Before the meeting began, we all carried out our tasks in turn. I opened my computer and checked a few key documents while my team stayed behind. Olivia, always cool-headed, was responsible for the evening deliveries. Richard and Mike monitored the company's internal relationships, starting correspondence with critical figures. Things were indeed moving fast. But there was an unease inside me. What would be the outcome of such a massive plan, a revenge involving so many people? As the night wore on and everyone grew quiet, thoughts started swirling in my mind. No one would devise a plan quite like this, 'cause every person involved was far beyond where they stood in that moment. Every step was a domino, and as those dominoes began to fall one by one, I thought I'd take more pleasure in watching the company's structural foundations crumble. The hours passed, and people started gathering in the meeting room, unaware of the developments. No one knew how this evening would end in a revolution. But I was focused on just one goal, starting the destruction no one wanted to see. As the clock approached midnight, I arrived at the office for the final phase of my plan. I knew nothing would be the same after that moment. But it all hinged on a single move, exposing Sarah and Greg's secret plans and bringing everything to light. In that room, there was enough time for everything to be revealed with perfect timing. But it was also a disaster no one expected. It was midnight. The office lights glowed dimly, and this strange silence felt like the harbinger of a disaster. Liza was focused on her computer screen, every click, every document, every email pushing her entire plan forward in a single direction. Her team had completed their preparations too. Everyone was focused on their tasks, everyone would do everything right. But there was something inside me. A feeling. Through taking such a massive step, no matter what happened, there would be no turning back. Liza's final preparation in her mind was to reach certain members of the company's executive team and pull them into the fray. Those email threads were the strongest trump card to corner them. But there was more. The exposure of Sarah and Greg's secret documents would create the moment everything exploded. She was racing against time to trap them. Just then, James called. "Liza, is everything ready? We need to finish by midnight. Everyone's in place. Do we know what to do now?" His voice was different from usual. There was a mix of determination, fear, and confidence. But I felt those emotions too. There were so many feelings inside me that I didn't know which ones to explain to them. "Yes, everything's ready. We've started leaking the documents. Now we just wait for the right moment. Tonight it all ends," I said calmly. After a brief silence from James, the sound I heard was both an affirmation and a threat. "Then everything changes. This won't be like this morning." And as I waited for that night, somehow, so many thoughts swirled in my mind. It hadn't been easy for Liza to reach this point. She had stayed silent for years, turned a blind eye for years. But now, the truth of everything was coming to light. The anger inside me was igniting everything, pushing me toward the goal. No one could stop this anymore. At exactly midnight, Liza and her team came together to make their final move in the critical meeting at the office. This was a different kind of meeting. This meeting was the beginning of everything. A meeting where everyone focused on a single goal, where every move was meticulously planned. As Liza entered the room, she couldn't quite project the determination inside her. With every step, she felt as if she were carrying a burden. She was preparing to topple a system that had disregarded her years of effort, loyalty, and trust. This wouldn't just free her, it would free her team too. And everyone would pay the price. 4 connected monitors began powering on one by one around the table. James, Mike, and Claudia quickly started uploading the documents they had gathered earlier. Everything had to proceed in the right order. The tension was evident in everyone's eyes. No one was truly ready for such a massive plan to explode in the next step. Liza kept her hands on the table patiently. She didn't want to lose even a second. That moment, Richard glanced at one of the monitors and nodded seriously. Yes, this is their weakest point. Right now, everything's turning against them. They won't forget this night, Mike said with a smile. But there was something missing in the tone of his voice. It was as if he wasn't entirely sure. Liza turned her eyes to her team once more and took a deep breath. Yes, they won't forget this night. But we have to do this right. If we don't take this step correctly, I have no doubt everything will collapse. Everyone focused on their computers with a single motion. As each file opened, as each document uploaded quickly, Liza tried to control the chaos inside her. Just then, an email containing Greg's secret correspondence about critical meetings echoed through the room. In that moment, Liza's eyes fixed on a single point. The documents were being transmitted quickly and accurately. Files belonging to the company's top ranks revealed all the dirty secrets of their dark past. At the same time, Sarah and Greg needed to know they'd received these documents too. But at that point, nothing mattered to them anymore. 'Cause the documents would bring everything to an end. Time seemed to slow down. Company's most important executives were caught unprepared in the face of these documents. They would all fall, along with the dirty games they had hidden at every opportunity for years. As they made their first move, Liza paused for a moment. That was the moment when everything could spiral out of control. The documents wouldn't just shake them, they'd shake the company's foundations too. In that instant, she felt everything change. Then, turning to her team, she said, "Now we make the final move. Everything's going exactly as we wanted." Just then, Greg and Sarah burst into the room, staring at Liza and her team in shock. There was fear in Sarah's eyes, astonishment on Greg's face. In that moment, they both realized everything was about to explode. "What does this mean, Liza?" Sarah said, her voice trembling. These documents, what are you doing?" Liza smiled calmly but sharply. "Your downfall is here, Sarah. And Greg. It was over long ago. But don't forget this, we never lost either. Let's see now, we're playing the game. Let's find out who wins." Clock was nearing 3 in the morning. The lights in the office were still on. But one thing was clear, the company's dark side was being shaped by Liza and her team's hands. Greg and Sarah could no longer expect anything but the exposure of everything. This wasn't just the beginning of the end for the company, it was the end of their careers too. Liza took one more deep breath. The old identity she had lost inside her was gone now. She was just a woman chasing revenge. And this was only the beginning. The first light of dawn filtered through the office windows. It was 4:30 a.m. Tension was palpable in every corner. Liza's goal was to see the big picture, the collapse of a company and her revenge. But this was just the beginning. Now, Sarah and Greg, who had completely lost control, were starting to understand everything. This was visibly terrifying them. Greg pulled himself together and began speaking sharply. "I can't accept this, Liza. You've ruined the company's future. No one will forget this. I mean, the things people like you lose." A cold smile appeared on Liza's face. "Lose? I've only won, Greg. Today, we'll understand better who this company really is. You stopped playing games with your thoughts, and I put an end to it." Control within Liza was far more than a moment of tension. That moment wasn't just about revenge, it was the pinnacle of a process of rebuilding herself. Defining herself, embracing every moment of her life, gave her strength. But it also meant that every moment was both irreversible and uncontrollable. She was recreating herself, and in this process, everything could be sacrificed. In the meeting room, Liza was pondering something. Her demeanor at that moment was a sign of how isolated she had become. Deciding which path to take had always been difficult, but then she thought, "There's a path that brought me to this point, and the continuation of this path will be shaped only by me and my decisions." This brief monologue in her mind gave her the strength to bear the emotional burden of that moment. At the same time, she began to feel the slow results of some moves she had made earlier. Sarah and Greg's deal had been known to another executive as well. She wouldn't just destroy their own schemes, she could drag others into this collapse too. The next step meant the target was growing. Liza wasn't just aiming for Sarah and Greg anymore. She had set her sights on the hidden powers behind the company. There was a much bigger game at play, one that would lead all the way to Marcellus Bryant, the company's boss. Liza realized things were becoming increasingly complex. By 6 a.m., everyone in the office was still in shock, but Liza had a clear plan in her mind. Yes, it had started with Sarah and Greg, but there was so much more. Marcellus Bryant, the company's leader, the man everyone feared. His name alone made people swallow their words. His dark connections controlled nearly every aspect of the company. As Liza's team slowly uploaded data to their computers, they realized much of it belonged to Marcellus. These documents didn't just detail internal company dealings. They also included some of Marcellus's dirty agreements. In that moment, Liza made a decision. Marcellus wasn't just a man. He was a source of immense danger. If she truly wanted to end this, she had to bring him down too. This realization would come to life with one final instruction to her team. Liza turned to Richard. "We need to expose everything behind Marcellus. If we don't, this plan will mean nothing. We have to target him." There was no hesitation in Richard's eyes. Liza's plan was clear to him. "Yes, Liza. That man's dark past offers us big opportunities. If we can use everything correctly, his downfall could be a new victory for us." Liza quickly outlined her plans. "Everything is waiting for the right moment. But don't forget, before Marcellus, we'll target those sitting at the highest levels of this company. Everything Sarah and Greg hid will be Marcellus's weakest point." Everything at the company's pinnacle was about to change. As 8 a.m. approached, Liza and her team had devised a new strategy against Marcellus Bryant. He was the company's most powerful man, but his weakest point lay in the dark connections of his past. Liza's plan went beyond the business world. It was deeply personal too. With help from James, Mike, and Claudia, the files containing Marcellus's dark secrets began to be examined. While Liza watched Sarah and Greg's downfall, her eyes were always fixed on a bigger target, breaking the heart of the company and rebuilding it. Liza's ability to stay one step ahead was the team's greatest strength in this process. Because this wasn't just about revenge, it was also a quest for freedom. That freedom meant shaking the foundations of everything once trusted. Everything was slowly coming together. Every connection within the company, every secret deal, every misstep, all of it was being united under one person's leadership. As Liza planned her next move, she believed everyone around her would replace lost trust with a new order. For her, this wasn't just a battle, it was a journey to rediscover her own identity. Liza stood on one of the office's upper floors, gazing out the window as she took a deep breath. Her eyes seemed poised to witness the fall of a towering giant amidst these high-rise buildings. Marcellus Bryant, the company's boss, had been operating in the shadows for years, managing secret dealings with meticulous care. But no matter how powerful he was, Liza waited for him like a whale lurking in the depths of a river. Just as a whale waits for its prey. Marcellus Bryant's downfall wasn't just revenge for Liza, it was her freedom. because once she had worked loyally by his side, caught up in his games. But now it was the day everything would turn upside down. Liza, together with her team, was preparing for the final move. Liza's team had sprung into action in the early hours of the morning. Richard and Mike had obtained secret recordings of Marcellus's private meetings. Claudia had compiled details of illegal transactions from Marcellus's accounts dating back several years. At this point, they knew everything was ready and a single move could change it all. This wasn't just a plan they'd been working on for a few months, it was also the unraveling of a past she'd tried to forget for years. Liza opened the final file on her computer. Marcellus's biggest mistake, an agreement tied to hidden accounts, had played an active role in exposing everything. This information didn't just reveal her target, it also laid bare all the connections that would allow her to resolve it safely. Everything was complete. Now, all that remained was to show Marcellus these truths. 10 a.m., Liza decided to confront Marcellus. Timing was perfect. Company's CEO was alone in his office after his morning meetings. As she approached Marcellus's door, her heartbeat quickened. The cold determination within her, as always, had taken shape to destroy today's target. Liza took a deep breath and knocked on the office door. Marcellus's clear voice came from inside. "Come in," he said. Liza stepped in, her team behind her. Their eyes met. In that moment, she felt that chilling unease she hadn't experienced in years. But this time it was different. This time she held the power. Marcellus looked at her in astonishment. "What do you want, Liza? Here with such valuable time? What are you here for? You've ruined your company, destroyed your enemy. But what more do you want? Doesn't this ever end?" Liza smiled calmly and approached his desk, placing the file in front of him on the floor. "I now know how you've run this company, Marcellus. This is your end." Marcellus stood up from his chair in anger and stepped toward her. "Don't do this. You don't stand a chance." But without hesitation, Liza projected the secret files from her computer onto the screen. In that moment, Marcellus felt as though he'd fallen into a vast void. A frozen expression settled on his face. "What are these?" he said, his voice trembling. Liza responded slowly. "These are the proof of the dirty deals you've hidden for years, your illegal transactions, and everything you've kept secret until now. If I leak these documents to the press, your career and your life will be over. And no one can escape that." Marcellus staggered for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. "You can't do this. They're just rumors." "These," he shouted. Liza continued with the same calm. "They're not rumors, they're evidence. The only thing that protected you for so long was my loyalty to you all those years. But that loyalty, it's gone. Now I'm making this move against you." Marcellus took a deep breath and quickly grabbed his phone. But no matter how fast he was, it was too late. Truth was out. Liza took the phone and glanced at the screen. The power within this company is about to change hands. And you, Marcellus Bryant, will go down as the one who caused the greatest collapse in this company's history. Marcellus's eyes widened, but at that moment, Liza's team closed the door and began projecting data from the security cameras into the room. Screens opened up, showing Marcellus that it was all over. Every message, account transaction, and dirty deal came to life before his eyes, one by one. In that moment, Liza turned to him one last time and said calmly, "And your end is this simple. This company is no longer yours. This is my victory." As Liza left the room, she turned to Richard and Claudia, who were waiting in the back office. "It's done. This company is now under our control. The Marcellus and everyone around him have collapsed." Richard looked at her with a smile. "You did an incredible job, Liza. But there's a cost to this. We need to be careful too. We've caused such a massive change that it's only a matter of time before the other side starts making moves." Liza paused for a moment, then nodded and kept walking. "I know. But today we've made a new beginning, established a new order. Now there's only our path." Every moment left behind was now just a memory for Liza. True victory had come from drawing her strength out of the dark shadows of the past to reach this day's triumph. But at the end of every victory, the next battle began. Liza was quickly establishing the new order in the company. With Marcellus's downfall, most of the executives had been fired, replaced by her trusted team. However, with every new victory came dangers creeping in like a dark mist. In the morning hours, Liza and her team were holding a new strategy meeting. But Liza observed everything in silence. She knew things were changing too fast, and although she had brought down Marcellus, there were still some dark cornerstones within the company she couldn't control. Richard, Claudia, and the rest of her team were people she trusted deeply, but despite all this power, there were still things she had lost. One day, she would pay the true price of this victory. "Liza, last night we uncovered all of Marcellus's old connections," Richard said. "But we realized someone else was involved too. The sources of some files come from a much deeper circle within the company." Liza looked at Richard's words with care. "Another source? Who?" She noticed the worry on Richard's face. "I need to show you this. But first, let's reveal it at the right time. This isn't just about Marcellus's collapse. We might need to take another step." Liza nodded and picked up the document waiting on the table. "Our target isn't limited to Marcellus alone. He was just a tool. To fully take over this company, we need to take more steps. No one has seen how deep our plan goes." A week later, Liza thought Marcellus's downfall had been completely erased from the company. However, she realized everything was moving too quickly and too smoothly. She began to understand that things weren't as they seemed. There was another wing of the company, a shadow entity, and this would turn into a danger she couldn't predict. That morning, a new email arrived on Liza's computer. The sender's name was quite ordinary, but the message was complex enough to shatter all her peace. "Liza, Marcellus's end isn't what you think. The real game is just beginning. His fall was only the start. If you don't take steps against the biggest threats within the company, your entire victory will only be temporary. Someone like you can't fall into this trap." Liza took a deep breath and opened the email. Inside was a link to a hidden file. She downloaded and opened it, and her eyes froze. This file didn't just belong to Marcellus. It contained secret collaborations between the company's top executives and many employees. But the shocking part was a name Liza never expected: Claudia. Claudia, Liza's right-hand woman, her trusted friend. But now, among those files were Claudia's secret correspondences with Marcellus. Liza paused for a moment. This file showed how Claudia's role in the company had taken shape up until Marcellus's downfall. Claudia had been Liza's closest ally. This was a massive blow. Liza carefully made her way to Claudia's office, each step deliberate. Her heart began racing. Confronting the person she had trusted most until now, stripping away the mask from her face, wouldn't be easy. When she entered Claudia's office, she saw her sitting there, flipping through a few files on her desk. Claudia didn't seem to expect Liza's arrival, but Liza noticed the faint smile on her face. "Claudia, we need to talk about something," Liza said, her voice laced with composure. Claudia looked up at her, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Then she responded calmly, "Of course, Liza. What's wrong? Did something happen?" Liza walked toward her desk and pushed the file on her computer toward Claudia. "I saw this file. The parts that belong to you. Your secret correspondence with Marcellus. What explanation do you have?" Claudia froze for a moment, then averted her eyes from Liza and looked at the file. After a few seconds of silence, she took a deep breath and responded, "Liza, it's not what it looks like. I would never betray you. But Marcellus's demise actually pulled you into a bigger danger. That file contains a plan I made just to protect you. If I hadn't collaborated with him, some people within this company could have destroyed you. The real enemies aren't who you think they are." Liza listened carefully to Claudia's explanation as a complex feeling rose within her. Was she telling the truth? Claudia had been loyal to her for years, achieving successes together. But now, facing this new reality was changing everything. As Liza processed Claudia's words, an inner voice guided her. "Keep going. Form a new alliance. You're the only one who can control this company." Questioning Claudia's loyalty, though difficult, forced Liza to consider using her again in pursuit of her new goals. Even if she felt increasingly alone with each step, she had taken her revenge, but to make her victory permanent, she needed to forge new alliances and neutralize her enemies. Liza took a deep breath and looked at Claudia. "If you really mean you're on our side, you need to bring together the biggest threats within this company. Otherwise, your end will be like Marcellus's. And it won't just be yours, it'll be everyone's." Claudia nodded, locking eyes with Liza deeply as she replied, "We have to keep going. This game is one we both need to win." Liza didn't fully trust Claudia's words. The alliance she had formed with her was a necessity and a strategic move. But with each passing day, an inner voice sounded more alarms. "Don't see anyone as safe, Liza. No one can protect you. Only you can protect yourself." In the early morning hours, Claudia sent Liza a message saying they were ready for the meeting. Liza prepared herself and began walking toward the meeting room. Everything was changing rapidly, and with every step there was more risk. As she stepped into the meeting room, Claudia and Richard were waiting for her. There was a silent air of disagreement between them, but Liza ignored it and entered. Richard still seemed unable to shake off the morning's tension. "Liza, we've learned a few more things. We've addressed some security vulnerabilities within the company, but some old connections are still active. The traces of Marcellus's network remain strong." Claudia took a deep breath and added, "Yes, but with Marcellus's demise, someone else is trying to take his place. We need to notice this immediately. If we don't act, it might be hard to reclaim everything we've lost later." Liza stood in the center of the room, lost in thought. Another player, who was it? Had all of Marcellus's plans truly ended? Or was someone else trying to step into his shoes? For a moment, the air in the room grew heavy and everything fell silent. Liza turned her eyes to Claudia and Richard. "Who is this person, Claudia? Which connections are still active?" Claudia shook her head as she looked at the data on her screen. "We're moving slowly, but a few people from the old board are still running things behind the scenes. Especially the former head of the company's finance department, Gregory Feldman. He's highly experienced and extremely dangerous. He handled some of Marcellus's key dealings, and now he's trying to build his own power." Liza's chest tightened in an instant. Gregory Feldman. She had heard his name before and knew he worked alongside Marcellus, but she had never imagined he could be this powerful. Richard focused on Claudia's words and continued, "He's so strong that if we don't make the right moves, taking him down could be very difficult. But confronting him might turn into a bigger war. So we need to be careful." Liza listened closely to Richard while simultaneously forming a new strategy in her mind. She had to take down Gregory Feldman, but she also noticed another vulnerability. To thwart Feldman's efforts to gain power, she needed to strike at the right moment. But how? A week later, Liza was about to put her new plan into action. Together with Claudia and Richard, they were tracking Gregory Feldman's every move. Just then, another anonymous email arrived for Liza, changing everything. Liza, Gregory Feldman's dark past runs deeper. It's not just his financial connections. He also has ties to some powerful figures outside the company. You need to gather more information before facing him. Liza showed the message to Claudia and Richard. The faster we move against this person, the more advantage we'll have. We need to find out who's behind Feldman. With that, Claudia began investigating the company's hidden connections. Richard reached out to some old contacts outside the company to gather information on Feldman. Everything was moving quickly, but this speed also carried greater risk. Liza felt increasingly isolated with each passing day, noticing the hidden dangers approaching her from those around her. An internal war had begun. She had to carefully navigate her relationships with both her colleagues and her enemies. The loneliness within her was the price that came after all her victories. A month later, Liza and her team had obtained critical information about Feldman. They had identified his secret meetings and strategic moves. There were still senior executives in the company protecting his interests. This threatened the revolutionary new structure of the company. One early morning, Liza made her final plan with Richard and Claudia. They needed to neutralize Gregory Feldman's most trusted allies, but that was just the first step. To take Feldman down, they would corner him and target his weakest points. We'll show Gregory Feldman that it's all over. No one can take this company from us, Liza said with a resolute tone. This will be the final point of everything. Liza stood in the dark corner of her office, making her final preparations in the early morning hours. Claudia and Richard were, as always, part of her inner circle, but this time something felt different. Today was not just about the company's future, it was a turning point that would change her life. Gregory Feldman, the man trying to take Marcellus's place, had become the last major obstacle standing in her way as her enemy. The truth was, even with all the power she had gained, Liza always felt alone. Her alliance with Claudia allowed her to maintain a strong stance, but she still had to battle the loneliness within. It was no longer just about taking over the company. She wanted to see what would happen at the end of it all. "Are you ready?" Liza said, turning to Richard and Claudia. Composure in her voice masked the excitement within. Claudia took a deep breath, nodded, and checked the latest data on her computer. "Yes, everything about Feldman is ready. We're making our move today." The determination in Claudia's voice further solidified something inside Liza. Though this journey was dark, she knew victory would ultimately be hers. Richard spoke as he shuffled through the files on the table. "Feldman's days are numbered, but there are a few details we need to be cautious about. He was at the center of the company's financial power. If we make a wrong move against him, we could lose all control. We have to do this right." Liza gazed silently out the window, wondering what the true outcome of all this would be. With every step, there was more tension, more threats. But she had reached the final point. This would either be her triumph or Feldman's comeback. First, Liza had learned about a secret meeting Feldman was holding with the company's top executives. She had assigned her own agents to monitor his movements. Now, all she had to do was make the right move at the right time. Together with Richard and Claudia, they began surrounding the building where Feldman's office was located. They knew how delicate everything was. Liza felt the weight of this final step in a fight that had lasted years, aware of how much danger it could bring. Entering Feldman's office was only a matter of time. After coming this far, Liza felt nothing could stop her now. But she still had to be careful. Feldman was powerful enough not to back down easily. When the door opened, Liza, Claudia, and Richard stepped into the room. Feldman's expression shifted to surprise upon seeing Liza, but it quickly faded, replaced by a confident smile that spread across his face. "Liza, I had a feeling we'd meet at this point someday. And here we are, facing off at the final stage once again," Feldman said, leaning back in his chair with ease. Liza stood tall in front of him and responded, I expected this. But don't forget, Feldman, this company is mine now. It's slipping through your fingers. Feldman laughed and shook his head. Oh, Liza, I know how stubborn you are. But every time you think you're taking over the company, things get more complicated. You just can't see how big a mistake you're making by thinking you can control it. Liza took a deep breath and stepped closer to the man before her. You've made your mistakes, Feldman, and those who brought you here will make the same ones. With that, Liza glanced at the laptop in the room and some documents on Feldman's desk. I'm not just bringing you down, I'll bring down everyone who supported you. Everything will be lost, and you'll sink with it. Feldman responded without dropping his smile. Then let's do it. But remember, the more you play with me, the more your victory will just turn into destruction. Liza felt no fear from Feldman's words. But then, something unexpected happened. Feldman quickly grabbed his phone from the desk and made a call. Liza noticed immediately, Feldman had a backup plan. This move of his could truly be dangerous. Claudia, Richard, she whispered, warning them. We don't have any more time. We need to act now. As Feldman spoke on the phone, Liza turned around and decided to leave the room quickly. Claudia and Richard followed right behind her. Something inside Liza felt like it was starting to go wrong. Feldman was more powerful and prepared than ever before. They hurriedly left the meeting room and stepped outside. Liza said, Come on, it's over. This game won't end until it's truly finished. But this was just the beginning. Feldman indeed had a hidden move up his sleeve. Everything was unfolding too fast. Liza walked alone in the encroaching darkness outside, her heart beginning to race. She had realized they needed to get out of Feldman's office quickly. Claudia and Richard followed behind her, but Liza's mind was elsewhere. Feldman had lured her into a trap. Everything had taken a more complicated turn. The moment they left that room, she felt a fear that everything might come to a conclusion. Feldman's phone, that final call, what was it signaling? Liza pressed forward, unsure if she had fallen into this trap. Her eyes scanned the towering company building before her. Feldman was always one step ahead. Liza quickly turned to Claudia and Richard. From now on, we need to be careful. I know Feldman will play with us, and this game has just gotten more dangerous. I'm piecing together plans in my head, but something's still missing. Claudia nodded, a hint of worry in her voice. I didn't expect it to get this serious, Liza. But we need to prepare based on what you've said. We can't stay one step ahead until we fully figure out who's behind Feldman. Liza sensed the anxiety in Claudia's tone but didn't want to show it. She took a deep breath and continued walking. Feldman isn't alone. He's learned everything about us. But he still has a weak point. There are still some old employees in the company loyal to him. We have the chance to dismantle many of his old deals. Richard immediately pulled out his phone and quickly checked the data. Yes, Liza, but this time it doesn't seem like things will go exactly as we want. Feldman's security is nearly perfect. We need a bolder plan to take him down. Liza paused. This final move would truly be a matter of life and death. But stepping back now would mean losing everything completely. A week later, Liza began her final preparations, having clarified the situation she was in. In this revenge war she had started against Feldman, she believed everything would converge at a single point. Claudia and Richard had quickly set highly sensitive and risky operations in motion. But there was more. They were still tracking Feldman's every move from one step behind. Today was the right time for Liza's last move. Every step Feldman took was actually creating more traps for him. In her mind, she decided to ground herself one last time to see how everything would come together. Claudia and Richard, knowing they were about to make their final move against Feldman, acted as cautiously as possible. Liza had devised a plan. They would deliver the final blow to Feldman, but they had to be extremely careful in doing so. One morning, when Liza arrived at the company, a few security guards approached her and said, "Feldman has invited you to his office." That moment, a strange feeling stirred within Liza. Feldman was luring her into a trap. But this was also an opportunity that perfectly fit her plan. "I accept," Liza said with composure. As Liza walked toward Feldman's office, adrenaline surged through her with every step. When she opened the door, Feldman was leaning back in his chair with that same relaxed, proud demeanor. He smiled as Liza entered. "Liza, here we all are at last. Things have gotten quite interesting, haven't they?" Feldman's calm demeanor only heightened the tension within Liza. But no matter what, she had to win this war. "Let me tell you something, Feldman. We never had a chance. But taking control of this company will be a huge mistake for you," Liza said, her voice eerily calm. Feldman smiled. "Let me tell you something, Liza. These challenges of yours will only get tougher. You can't dismantle the games we've built with a single move. Someone like you can't undo years of my efforts." With a sudden motion, Feldman pressed a button next to his desk, and the room's security cameras sprang to life. Liza reacted quickly. The data Claudia and Richard had prepared earlier blocked all the devices Feldman had brought into the room. Liza calmly approached the desk and took control of Feldman's computer. Everything was resolved. In that moment, Liza found the data on his desk that exposed both Feldman's past dirty games and his financial schemes. "I'm done with you, Feldman," Liza said calmly. "Did you really think you were that powerful?" Feldman's face turned pale. "How this?" Liza opened the computer one last time and exposed all of Feldman's dealings and dirty games to the company. Simultaneously, she disabled the security cameras, and the data revealing every aspect of his crimes was shared throughout the entire company. The next day, news of Feldman's arrest spread throughout the company's headquarters. Though Liza had won, her expression was blank. There was an unease within her. She had secured her victory, but it had come at a cost. Liza had taken complete control of the company. Yet behind the triumph lay the melancholic truth of a woman who, for a time, had lost her own identity and been left alone. She needed to find balance in her life. After defeating Feldman, Liza's eyes saw things differently. The war that had lasted for years had finally ended, but the emptiness inside her persisted. Taking over the company and exacting her revenge had given her a short-term victory. But inner peace would always remain elusive. Her triumph wasn't the end of a great storm, it was the beginning. Though Liza had taken her revenge in Feldman's deceitful world and emerged victorious, she knew she had to pay the price for it all. In the end, a journey beyond victory was beginning.